Have you ever stopped to think about how you actually handle your feelings? I mean, is it a conscious choice or more of a gut reaction? Well, we're about to explore this amazing new map of our brains that shows there isn't just one path for our emotions. In fact, there are two, and they work in totally different ways.
So let's start with a big question. Are you in the driver's seat of your own mind? We all like to think we are, right? That we're the pilot, rationally charting our course. But the truth is, a lot of the time, our brain is just on autopilot. It's a default mode that's super fast, but not always super accurate.
And one of the most powerful of these default settings is something you've probably heard of, confirmation bias. It's this sneaky little habit our brain has of grabbing onto any piece of information that confirms what we already believe, while just conveniently ignoring, everything else that doesn't fit.
And get this, it's not just about wishful thinking. It's a fundamental filter that shapes our reality. An idea can pop into your head just a minute ago, and from that moment on, your brain starts automatically highlighting everything that supports it and becomes almost blind to anything that contradicts it. It's wild. Okay, so our brains have this powerful automatic filter for thoughts. But what about our feelings? Well, it turns out the exact same kind of autopilot exists for our emotions. We have these default ways of reacting, and just like with confirmation bias, understanding them is the absolute key to taking back control.
So let's open up our mental toolkit and look at two of the most important tools we have for dealing with tough emotions: reappraisal and acceptance. You can think of it like this. Reappraisal is all about actively changing the story you're telling yourself. Acceptance, on the other hand, is about observing that story without feeling the need to change a single word.
Reappraisal is a very active strategy. It's about reframing. So let's say you get cut off in traffic. The default story might be, that guy is a complete jerk. Reappraisal is when you consciously choose a new story, like, maybe they're rushing to the hospital. You're building a new, less emotional narrative, and this is a huge part of therapies like CBT.
Acceptance is totally different. It's not about changing the story at all, but about changing your relationship to it. It's the stance of mindful, curious observation. So you get cut off, you feel that anger rising, but instead of fighting it or reframing it, you just notice it. Okay, there's anger. You just let it be there, without judgment. This is a core idea in third-wave therapy.
Now here's the fascinating thing. We know from tons of research that both of these strategies actually work. They are effective at regulating emotion. But that leads to a really cool question. Are they doing the same thing inside our heads? Or are they taking completely different highways to get to the same destination?
So let's dive into the first major finding from a recent meta-analysis. It turns out that even though they seem like opposites, both reappraisal and acceptance actually plug into a shared neural system. There's a common ground where it all begins. What we're seeing here is incredible. These parts of the brain light up whether you're using reappraisal or acceptance. This tells us there's a fundamental core mechanism that gets switched on anytime we decide to intentionally engage with our feelings, whether we're trying to change them or just watch them.
And this core system has two main players. First, you've got a part of the prefrontal cortex that kind of acts like the brakes, helping us pause and make sense of a situation. And second, you have the insula, which is absolutely crucial for simply being aware of what's going on inside our bodies, our inner emotional state. They work together as the first step for managing any emotion.
But, and this is a big but, here's where things get really interesting. Beyond that common starting point, the two strategies go their separate ways. They take completely different neural pathways. This is truly a tale of two brain circuits.
Let's look at reappraisal first. You can think of this pathway as the CEO of your brain. It is a top-down process. It's your brain's executive control network stepping in, taking charge, and issuing new orders to the rest of the company. It's an act of deliberate, cognitive command and control.
So here's what's actually happening under the hood. Reappraisal fires up the brain's main executive centers, the parts responsible for conscious thought and planning. At the exact same time, it actively turns down the volume on the regions that handle our automatic, habitual emotional reactions. It is literally overriding your emotional autopilot with conscious thought.
Okay, now let's flip to acceptance. This is a totally different picture. Acceptance isn't a top-down command from the CEO, it's more of a bottom-up process. It's not about shouting orders, it's about activating the brain's awareness centers to simply sense and monitor what's happening, moment to moment without judgment.
So how does this work? Well, acceptance activates a really fascinating area called the clustrum. Think of it like a conductor for an orchestra, binding all our senses and thoughts into one unified, conscious experience. And as it does that, it quiets down the brain's mind-wandering hub, the part that gets us stuck ruminating in endless thought loops. It literally pulls you out of your head and into the present.
So what does this all mean when you put it together? It means we need a new map for our emotions, a much more sophisticated one. It's not just a single pathway of cognitive control. Our brains are way more clever and versatile than that.
And this new map looks something like this. You have that common core system right in the middle. That's the shared starting point for both. But branching off from there, you have two completely distinct, strategy-specific pathways. One for the top-down cognitive work of reappraisal, and another for the bottom-up awareness work of acceptance.
And the big takeaway here, the bottom line, is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to managing your feelings. Your brain is equipped with multiple, fundamentally different tools. Sometimes you need a hammer, and sometimes you need a wrench. Sometimes you really do need to change your story, and other times you just need to notice it.
And this isn't just a cool academic finding. As the researchers themselves point out, this has huge real-world implications. Think about it. If someone is already feeling overwhelmed and their cognitive control is maxed out, telling them to just reframe things might not work. It might even backfire. In that case, teaching a completely different skill, like acceptance, could be a game changer.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. These aren't just abstract ideas. These are two real, distinct neural circuits inside your head right now. And like any circuit, like any muscle, they can be trained and strengthened with practice. You know they both exist. The only question left is, which one will you train?